Donald Trump authorizes U.S. bombers to attack Iran. Iranian foreign minister says the attacks are outrageous and will have everlasting consequences. Sia Long continues visit to the city before concluding his trip today. Good evening and welcome to TVB News. Despite suggesting a two-week period before taking action, the U.S. carried out airstrikes on 3 of Iran's nuclear facilities. President Trump called the attack a success and said Iran's nuclear ambitions have been obliterated. Israel thanked the U.S. for its direct military support, which involved the use of special bunker bombs and B-2 planes at 3 sites. Iran says there has been no radiation contamination outside the sites and is considering a response. David Garrett with more.
Time to strike. Donald Trump in the Situation Room overseeing the bombing of Iran's nuclear sites. Having said he'd give diplomacy 2 weeks, after just a couple of days, the US president sent B-2 bombers with bunker-busting bombs. Vice President Vance and other cabinet members alongside Trump, who says Iran must not have a nuclear bomb. 3 sites were hit amid mixed reports about how close Iran was to creating a nuclear weapon. The Fordo nuclear facility hidden deep in a mountainside south of Tehran. This was the site Israel struggled to impact. A research centre at Isfahan, which was struck by Israel yesterday and was shown on fire by Iranian television. And a third site at Natanz, also in the centre of Iran, was targeted too. Iran has warned of consequences. Trump announced the strikes first on his platform, writing US bombers were clear of Iranian airspace, finishing by saying now is the time for peace. Shortly afterwards, the president addressed his nation, telling Americans Iran's nuclear ambitions are over.
Iran's key nuclear enrichment facilities have been completely and totally obliterated. Iran, the bully of the Middle East, must now make peace. If they do not, future attacks will be far greater and a lot easier.
In Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu thanked Trump in a warm telephone call shortly after the bombings. In a video released by the Prime Minister's office, Netanyahu says, "I promised Iran's nuclear facilities would be destroyed. That promise was kept." He said there was full coordination between me and Trump, who he thanked from the bottom of his heart. Israel's military then released more footage of their own aerial attacks on Iran, the IDF blowing up missile launchers and Iranian fighter jets on the ground. Israel has claimed control of much of the airspace over their enemy for days. Netanyahu justified US involvement because of the threat to our very existence.
We worked as a team like perhaps no team has ever worked before. And we've gone a long way to erasing this horrible threat to Israel. I want to thank the Israeli military for the wonderful job they've done. And most importantly, I want to congratulate the great American patriots who flew those magnificent machines tonight, and all of the United States military on an operation the likes of which the world has not seen in many, many decades. Hopefully, we will no longer need their services in this capacity. I hope that's so.
The US's Spirit stealth bomber is thought to be the only fighter jet in the world that can drop the 14,000-kilogram bombs known as massive ordnance penetrators. This plane that carried them, seen at a base in Missouri, cost $2 billion with a range of over 6,000 nautical miles and can be refueled while in flight. 6 of these bunker-busting bombs were reportedly dropped at Fordo.
Fordo is dug deeply under a mountainside, and it's long been believed that America would need to use specialized bunker-busting bombs to destroy the facility. Now, Iran has acknowledged these attacks, but we don't yet know just how much damage has been done.
Iran said the U.S. attacks on its nuclear sites were against international law and will have everlasting consequences. Nasfi Karim with more.
Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi, speaking from Istanbul, said Iran reserved all options to defend itself, saying the attacks were outrageous and will have everlasting consequences.
The warmongering and lawless administration in Washington is solely and fully responsible for the dangerous consequences and far-reaching implications of its act of aggression. The US military attack on the territorial integrity and national sovereignty of a UN member state carried out with genocidal Israeli regime, carried out in collusion with the genocidal Israeli regime, has once again revealed the extent of the United States' hostility towards the peace-seeking people of Iran, who will never compromise over their independence and sovereignty.
Iran's foreign ministry said the US has itself launched a dangerous war against Iran with the attacks. It sent a message to the world reminding that it was the US that betrayed diplomacy by supporting Israeli attacks last week, just 2 days before scheduled nuclear talks. Iran has the right to resist with full force, it said, after US President Donald Trump earlier said he would decide within 2 weeks whether to attack Iran, but launch his aircraft soon afterwards. A senior Iranian parliamentary official said the NPT's own laws gave Iran the right to withdraw from the treaty. Unlike Israel, Tehran is a signatory to the NPT and allows inspectors into the country to check on their nuclear facilities. Iran's military response was swift. Sirens sounded in Tel Aviv soon after the US attacks, with Israel saying its air defense had intercepted many of the Iranian missiles. At least 16 people were reportedly injured in the Israeli port of Haifa. An Israeli rescue service said Iranian missiles struck areas in the northern and central parts of the country as well. In the skies of Amman, the capital of Jordan, several Iranian missiles were seen being intercepted. Iranian rocket launchers aimed at Israel must fly over Jordanian skies to reach their target. In a later statement, Iran's Revolutionary Guard said it had fired one of its biggest ballistic missiles at Israel in response to the US attacks. The Khorramshahr 4, part of a salvo of 40 missiles Iran fired, can carry multiple warheads and has the heaviest payload of Iran's ballistic missile fleet. It has been described as having a 2,000-kilometer range and a 1,500-kilogram warhead. Israel then released videos showing what it says are its aircraft bombing targets in Iran, including aircraft, missile launchers and soldiers. Nazri Karim, TVB News.
The Secretary General of the United Nations and a number of other countries called for a de-escalation of tensions after the U.S. strikes in Iran. Daniel Rao reports.
In a post on X, United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres said he was gravely alarmed by the use of force by the United States against Iran. He urged UN member states to help with the de-escalation of tensions and uphold their obligations under the United Nations Charter and other rules of international law. Japanese Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba told reporters it is important to de-escalate the situation in Iran as soon as possible. Ishiba also maintained Iran's development of nuclear weapons must be prevented. Asked if he supports the US tax on Iran, he declined to comment. Ishiba said officials are still assessing details while ensuring the protection and safety of Japanese nationals in Iran, Israel and the wider Middle East. The Japanese Prime Minister said he has instructed officials to watch the development with a sense of urgency and take every precaution to prevent the increase of oil and utility costs. People in Tokyo also expressed their concerns about the tensions. One man said he feared seeing the US crossing the line and heading into another war. A tourist visiting the city from Ireland said the last thing the world needs is another major conflict.
You know, there's horror everywhere. There's horror in America at the moment as well, in Los Angeles. It's not a good thing. We don't want war. We want peace.
The Australian Foreign Ministry issued a statement saying the security situation in the region is highly volatile. It called for de-escalation, dialogue and diplomacy. New Zealand Foreign Minister Winston Peters urged all parties to return to talks. Peters wouldn't say if New Zealand supported US President Donald Trump's actions.
Ongoing military action in the Middle East is extremely worrying, and it's critical further escalation is avoided. We strongly support efforts towards diplomacy and urge all parties to return to talks.
British Prime Minister Keir Starmer said Iran's nuclear program is a grave threat to international security. He called on Iran to return to the negotiating table and reach a diplomatic solution to end this crisis. Dan Rao, TV News.
On the final day of Sia Long's research and inspection visit to Hong Kong, the director of the Hong Kong and Macau Affairs Office met with district councillors and visited a community living room in Kowloon City. Samantha Lee reports.
At around 9 this morning, Sia Long arrived at the central government offices. He was welcomed by Alice Mak, Secretary for Home and Youth Affairs, and Carol Yip, Director of the Chief Executive's Office. Xia held a meeting with the chairs of the city's 18 district councils. He left after 3 hours. Accompanied by Chief Executive John Lee and Secretary for Labor and Welfare Chris Sun, Xia paid a visit to a Tohua 1 community living room, which is operated by the Tonghua Group of Hospitals. The facility is part of the government's initiative to provide communal spaces for grassroots families to meet the needs of their daily lives, such as cooking, doing homework, and holding interest classes. He stayed for around 20 minutes. The Tohua 1 Community Living Room is the largest living room project in the city. It opened in 2024 and is expected to serve 90,000 people annually. Xia then headed to the liaison office of the Central People's Government in Hong Kong. Samantha Lee, TVB News.
Financial Secretary Paul Chan will lead a delegation to visit Beijing and Tianjin for a 4-day trip tomorrow. Chan also noted in his blog that Hong Kong's economy remains largely stable, but stressed its retail and catering sectors continue to face major challenges. This as the city's restaurants recorded a 0.6% drop in profit year-on-year during the first quarter of this year, while fast food restaurants experienced a boost of 1.9%. Meanwhile, non-Chinese restaurants and bars recorded an increase in profit of 2.4% and 6.5% respectively during the last quarter. Still ahead, Housing Secretary Winnie Ho explains to TVB News about the new plan to address the subdivided flat issue. Hong Kong and mainland residents can access new real-time cross-boundary payment service starting today. And Ukrainians observe the longest day of the year with a midsummer celebration. Welcome back. The Housing Bureau has been working on a comprehensive plan to eradicate notorious subdivided flats with poor living conditions. Under the proposed Basic Housing Units Bill, landlords must register their subdivided units, and those below official standards must perform rectifications. Secretary for Housing Winnie Ho told TVB News that rents for basic housing units will not go up. Samantha Lee spoke with the Housing Secretary.
There are currently about 220,000 residents living in 110,000 subdivided units across Hong Kong. The authorities will allow a 3-year grace period beyond 2027, when landlords can make renovations. Speaking with TVB News, Secretary for Housing Winnie Ho said nearly 30,000 subdivided flats do not meet the bill's minimum floor area requirement of 8 square meters. Given landlords may have to spend possibly hundreds of thousands of dollars on rectification, registration and inspection, how many of them would continue operating?
Take a very conservative estimation, say 10,000 will come out of this 30,000. And the remaining 70,000 altogether, I have 80,000 recognized basic housing unit in the future.
Still, some people choose to live in a shoebox flat because of its cheap rent and favorable location. Some concerned groups are worried that the poorest will have to pay the highest rents after the new government policy.
Would you expect a rise or a decline in rents of subdivided units?
Yeah, a good question. The supply and demand really regulates the rents. If the long-term public housing, the 10 years, I have a very clear plan to provide a supply of 308,000 units. With an adequate supply, there's no room for the rent to increase.
On another issue, the Housing Bureau has postponed the plan to build 8,300 public flats in Fanning Area 17, claiming that the site has complex geology, with a deep bedrock level at depths. This is expected to result in a longer construction period and much higher costs. Ho stressed the authorities will not give up the project, but reprioritize housing projects based on cost effectiveness. Samantha Lee, TVB News.
Hong Kong and mainland residents can officially access real-time cross-boundary payment services starting today. This as the Hong Kong Monetary Authority noted that the system was running largely smoothly as of noon. Starting today, residents in the city and the mainland can use the Faster Payment System, or FPS, or its mainland counterpart to conduct real-time cross-boundary money transactions under the Payment Connect scheme. Those who are transferring money northbound need to use the payee's mainland bank account information or mobile phone number. But some mainland businessmen working in the city said they encountered obstacles while using the digital platform. One of them noted the provided phone number of the payee had not been registered, and he had to use the payee's bank account information instead. This, as the HKMA reminded users of the payment system to update mobile apps related to financial institutions. Under the Payment Connect scheme, northbound remittances from Hong Kong to the mainland are subject to a daily cap of $10,000, while the annual limit is set at $200,000. The system is operational 24 hours each day. For southbound transactions, users are subject to an annual limit of $50,000 or around 390,000 Hong Kong dollars. Services are available between 7 a.m. and 11 p.m. each day. Meanwhile, some lawmakers in the financial sector suggested authorities adjust the northbound remittance restrictions in the long term. Lawmaker Chan Chun-ying said as residents could use various bank accounts to make transactions surpassing the $10,000 limit every day, the daily cap could be increased to $50,000. He also suggested the payment system be expanded to include remittances between enterprises on both sides of the border. To prepare for the rainy season in the summer, the Geotechnical Engineering Office is currently running trial projects involving drones for hillside and slope monitoring services in Sai Kung and eastern Hong Kong Island. The Development Bureau said on its blog that the Geotechnical Engineering Office is operating drone monitoring services in Tai Mong Tsai under the framework of the Low Altitude Economy Regulatory Sandbox. Authorities said they have already collected the data for the first phase of the scheme. The information is then used for creating a model of the terrain, which will allow authorities to compare the hillside situation both before and after heavy rain. On eastern Hong Kong Island, the drones will activate on their own and operate along set routes and monitor slopes in the area before and after heavy showers. Despite the ongoing war with Russia, hundreds of Ukrainians observed the longest day of the year with a midsummer celebration of some of their oldest traditions. Rooted in Ukraine's ancient past of Slavic paganism, the event, Ivana Kupala, features rituals and symbolism to honor the summer solstice, which are related to fertility, nature, purity, and renewal. The celebration predates the region's Christianization at the end of the first millennium. At the open-air National Museum of Folk Architecture and Ukrainian Life on the outskirts of Kiev, participants in embroidered shirts and blouses strolled among thatch-roof cottages, wooden churches, and windmills dating to the 18th and 19th centuries. Many participants viewed the celebration as crucial to support Ukrainian culture and traditions. And that's the news. Thanks for watching.